Hi, Anna.
Hi, Jade. Good morning.
Good morning. We'll start in 3 more minutes. I think I wrote all my screen sharing issues solved today, but let's see.
But it's difficult because the way it is, we have to share. You have to share screens so many times.
I think let's keep our fingers crossed. But
Yeah.
the participants who are joining now, we ran the webinar yesterday and we had some screen sharing difficulties that we are hoping we will solve today. But please bear with us, we're doing our best. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the PESA Cross-Cutting webinar. I'm really pleased that you're here. I'm going to go through some practical information before we start into the webinar properly. So participants will be muted throughout the webinar, and you can write your questions in the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of the screen. There should be a little box with Q&A. There are also like not a massive amount of people here today. There's about 20 people this morning. So if you would like to raise your hand to speak, please feel free to do so. We're going to use a tool called Mentimeter and also some polls for interactivity and for feedback. So we really hope that you'll join in and enter your answers into polls or into the Mentimeter that we use. The session is being recorded and the link will be uploaded to the LMS after the event. The objective of the session is to explain how SAI auditors' cross-cutting competencies contribute to the value and benefits of SAIs. So our idea here really is that we want to look at the competencies that we think all auditors need, whether they be performance auditors, compliance auditors, or financial auditors, and how those competencies help the auditor to contribute to the value and benefit of SAIs. So when you look at the cross-cutting papers, you'll see that the first paper, paper 1, is about those values and benefits, about how SAIs contribute to the country that they're in, and we look at the standards and how they help with those contributions. And the second paper looks at the competencies that are needed to make that contribution. So for our agenda today, I'll start by welcoming you. We will look at ISAI 150, which looks at the organizational requirements for maintaining SAI auditor competencies. We'll then look at value and benefits for all. And Carolina, who you see here on screen, is joining us from Brazil. She's seconded to work with IDI on PESA, and she is a PESA graduate as well as a member of the PESA Learning Circle, which is working on the CPD policy for PESA. So she will take us through the value and benefits section. We'll then look at competencies to deliver SCI value and benefits. One of those competencies that we talk about is ethics. So we'll try a bit of a spotlight on ethics, and there'll be time for your questions and answers. And please take this opportunity to ask any questions that you have, whether they're about logging into the system, about where you find things in PESA, or about the contents of the learning that you've done itself. So I'm going to start off with the first poll. No, I'm going to start off with the welcome. I'm excited to do the first poll, so maybe we do that. Ready? Let's start off with this first poll. So I just wanted to get an idea of where you are within PESA. So how far have you advanced? Have you not started? Is Paper 1 Education IPDP in progress? Paper 1 Education IPDP completed? Paper 2 in progress, or one of the functional papers in progress? So we have about 2/3 of people who have responded so far. Great. So from those who have responded, we can see that 3 people have not yet started. 9 people, or about 60% of people, are in progress with paper 1, and about 20% of people have completed paper 1. So what I would really recommend is that if you haven't started paper 1 yet, then it's a really good time to make a start. When you look at PESA, you'll see that there is a PESA Space Quest, which we include in the education materials. And the purpose of the Space Quest is to try and encourage behaviors that we think will help you with your learning. So you'll find that there is a level up where you score points by answering questions within the materials. And if you get the questions correct, you score more points, and you will have a little spaceman who goes through their journey. And as you answer more questions, they increase through their journey. You also have challenges, and the challenges give like a benchmark or a recommendation of where we think you should be or could be within the materials. So for the 1st of July badge, which we will be awarding over the next week, the target was to have completed the first paper of digital education. So just the education modules, although as you know, we always recommend that you start the IPDP at the same time. I know for some of you who have started, you might be finding that it is a little bit hard work. And I would say that PESA is not easy, but you will notice that I have included a superhero motifs throughout this presentation when we're thinking about competencies. The reason for the superhero motifs is because when we draw up lists of competencies, we can sometimes feel like we're describing this kind of super auditor or this kind of a magical person that none of us can ever really be. But the reason why we have quite high competency requirements as auditors and why we see that as being important is because of the role of the auditor within the country. So when people say, you know, is it worth the effort to do PESA? Why should I do it? I would respond that becoming an IDI certified auditor through PESA is an impactful journey that not only enhances your career, but also amplifies your ability to deliver value and benefits to all. In our rapidly evolving work, the role of an auditor has never been more crucial. SAI auditors are the unsung heroes who ensure transparency, accountability, and efficiency. They're the guardians of integrity, helping organizations to uphold the highest standards and fostering an environment of trust and reliability. By pursuing PESA, you're not just acquiring a set of skills, you're embarking on a mission to make a tangible impact. So PESA gives you empowerment through knowledge. PESA builds a comprehensive understanding of auditing principles, techniques, and best practices. And this knowledge is your power or your superpower. It allows you to see the bigger picture, to analyze and interpret data with a critical eye, and to provide insights that drive improvement. PESA will also give you a personal growth and confidence. So the journey to certification is a rigorous one, challenging you to expand your knowledge and refine your skills. It builds resilience, sharpens your analytical abilities, and enhances your problem-solving skills. As you master these competencies, you'll gain a sense of confidence and self-assurance. So I encourage SAI auditors to take that step towards certification. PESA isn't easy, but the knowledge you gain, the skills you develop, and the impact you make will not only enrich your career, but also leave an indelible mark on your organizations and the communities that you serve. So I really welcome you onto this PESA journey and into this webinar, and I'm really pleased that you're here with us today. And if you haven't yet started the PESA materials, I would really recommend that you make a start. The first thing when you go into the LMS is a module called Getting Started, and this is a great place to see where everything is and how it all works. So we know where you are through your PESA journey. And now I just wanted to mention ISAI 150. So ISAI 150 is a new organizational requirement for SAIs, and it is actually a standard, but it is a part of the IFPP, so the InterSci Framework of Professional Pronouncements that IDI has consulted on extensively, and we've worked with CBC and TFIAP, which is the Task Force on InterSci Auditor Professionalization, to develop this standard. This standard, as we said, is aimed at an organizational level. So it's what the SAI should do to be able to deliver on its mandate. And it includes the standard itself, ISAI 150 on auditor competence, but it's supported by two GIDs. The first GID, which provides guidance, is a guidance on the development of competency frameworks for auditors. And included within this guidance is a global competency framework that applies to auditors who are operating within the ISAIs, the international standards. So these are the competencies that we consider universal across SAIs. Within these competencies, we have those that are cross-cutting and those that relate specifically to an audit stream, be it compliance, financial, or performance audit. So the competency framework that is established by InterSci and has been approved by INCASci is a T-shaped framework. So we have a bar across the top, which is competencies that are for all auditors, whatever discipline. And then the T, the part that comes down, is the competencies that require to a particular audit stream. So for example, a financial audit. PESA is designed to deliver on those competencies. So our syllabus and our course outline is mapped to that competency framework. So if you go through the PESA program and become certified, you are certified as demonstrating those competencies. There'll be other things that you need within your organization, within your SAI, and that can be developed within your organization. But this big global part we can take care of through PESA. The second part, the second guidance, the GID 1951, is a guidance on the development of pathways for professional development of auditors. And PESA is one of these pathways. So one of the ways in which the SAI can develop their auditors to be able to deliver the audits that you want to deliver. So when we look at the requirements within ISAI 150, it refers back to ISAI 100, which is the fundamental principles of public sector auditing. And as you go through paper one in the cross-cutting modules, you'll find that you have a large module with 2 units, that really focuses in on those fundamental principles of public sector auditing. But ISAI 100 provides that each SAI should establish and maintain procedures for competency management on an organisational level that will provide it with reasonable assurance that the SAI auditors have the competencies required to fulfil their functions. The competency management at an organisational level generally involves determining relevant competencies, often through the use of a competency framework, providing enabling human resource practices, providing pathways for professional developments, and assessing and monitoring competencies. So you can see where PESA fits into these organisational requirements. These requirements are there to help the SAI to meet the principle INTERSAI P12, which covers the value and benefits of SAIs. This principle really focuses on SAIs making a difference to the lives of citizens. And it really tries to look at the SAI from the outside in. So to look at the SAI in terms of that relationship with the citizens or people who are living in the country. And there's kind of three sets of principles within INTERSAI P12 that really build up to achieving this SAIs making a difference to the lives of citizens. So these are strengthening the accountability and transparency and integrity of government and public sector entities, being a model organisation through leading by example, and demonstrating ongoing relevance to citizens, Parliament, and other stakeholders. So when we look at paper 1, provide value and benefits for all, we're really trying to focus in on what it takes for the SAI to provide value and benefits for citizens. So by studying the paper, the SAI auditor will achieve the following learning outcomes. Explain why SAIs matter, which is partly what happens in INTERSAI P12. Trace the value chain of SAI capacity, SAI outputs, and SAI outcomes through which SAIs contribute to value and benefits for all, and identify SAI auditor actions that contribute to the SAI's delivery of value and benefits for all. We will look a little bit more at the value chain in a few moments when I hand over to Anna. And the value chain is a fairly chunky part of the cross-cutting papers. There are 2 modules at the beginning of paper 1 that look at the value chain, but you will also find that when you come to the exam, there's a 5-mark case study that is entirely on modules 1 and 2, so SAIs delivering value and benefits. We will also, in paper 1, reflect on the use of ISAIs in securing high quality audits. So why does the IFPP matter? Why do we follow international standards? We'll examine the fundamental principles of public sector audit. So this was the ISAI 100 we mentioned a few moments ago, and identify SAI auditors' actions for ensuring the delivery of high quality audits. We'll then select tools and techniques for conducting high quality audits and determine ways in which SAIs can stay relevant. So on that note, I will hand over to Anna to talk a little bit about the values and benefits and the value chain for delivering those.
Thank you, Jade. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this context-setting webinar on the cross-cutting papers. Thinking back on the benefits of going through the CC papers, I always like to say that the subjects that are presented in the CC papers are part of our day-to-day practice as SAI auditors. In the modules that are part of the CC paper 1, as Jade just mentioned, we have the opportunity to reflect on why SAIs matter, tracing the value chain of SAIs, identifying how each one of us can create value and benefits for all, identifying actions we can take to deliver high quality audits, and determining ways in which our own SAI can stay relevant. And although those subjects are part of our day-to-day practice, the fact that they are presented in a very systematized manner in the educational modules of PESA really help us to connect the dots of elements that are crucial to our work as public sector auditors. And as Jade just said, this way we are empowered by the knowledge we acquire throughout the whole program of PESA. And when it comes to connecting the dots, I believe that getting to know this framework here, the SAI Strategic Management Framework, plays a significant role because it broadens and strengthens our understanding of all the elements that have an impact on our actions towards pursuing our main goal, which is creating a value and benefits for all in line with the objectives of INTOSAI P12, Jade showed as well. So very briefly, the SAI Strategic Management Framework describes the value chain through which SAIs deliver value and benefits to all, and the environment that influences this value chain. And according to the logic of the framework, the main elements of the SAI Strategic Management Framework are, as we have here on this slide, SAI capacity, SAI outputs, SAI outcomes, and SAI contribution to impact. But before we dive in the main characteristics of each one of these elements and how they relate to each other, let's just have a quick quiz. So just a minute, I'm going to launch the quiz.
So with this quiz, if you just have a go, we won't know who put which answer. And it's just to see how you're doing with the modules that you've already done and to give us a chance to talk about some examples.
Jade, it doesn't, I don't
Doesn't
have
work.
it in here.
I will launch
Yeah.
the quiz.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it might run if it's my fault. Okay.
Thank you. It's already here.
Great. So today you were able to see it.
Yeah.
I have no idea what happened yesterday.
Yeah, because I couldn't see yesterday.
So in this quiz, we have a number of components of the value chain, and we ask you if it's a SAI capacity, a SAI output, a SAI outcome, or a contribution to SAI impact. Don't worry if you're guessing, but have a go and see what you think.
Yeah. We're going to give you some time for you to go through all the 8 scenarios that we have here.
We'll give people a little bit longer. We will talk through these and through the value chain a little bit in a moment. So please don't worry if you're not sure, just have a go, think about what you think, and yeah. So Anna, can you see the questions or can you see what people wrote as well?
Just the questions, not the answers.
we're at the moment at 45%, but I'm holding out for 50% of people answering before I end the poll. And then when I end the poll, I will share the results, which I believe that people in the group will be able to see, and you will be able to see too.
Okay, thank you.
We just need one more person to get us over the 50%. I've been watching the British election all night. So now I'm like, okay, we just need one more vote and then we're over. Yes, 59%, we did it. Brilliant. So let me end the poll and share the results. It's quite interesting when we see what people have put. There's always some where you feel like, would I have put that, or would I have, yes. So the first one, the scenario is the approach road of an important bridge was built as a result of an audit report. So what we're saying, Anna, capacity, output, outcome, or contribution to site impact.
It's for this year, but do you have the percentage of people's answers?
Sorry, I didn't know you didn't see that. Never mind.
Yeah, no, I can't see it yet.
11% of people put site output, 42% of people put site outcome, and 47% of people wrote contribution to site impact.
Yeah,
so
great.
Nobody thought it was a site capacity, so I think that's good.
Yeah, that's really good, and we can notice that people are the majority of people got in doubt about site outcome and site impact, contribution to impact, right? And it's interesting because we have something to mention here, because in this case we can see that this is related to and not, it is a result of audit report. So it happened as a consequence of audit work. In this case, this is a hint, a tip that we have to identify an audit outcome. And why shouldn't it be considered a site contribution to impact? Because it would come as a consequence of this bridge that was built. Because this way, we're not talking about site contribution to impact, we're talking about a difference in people's lives. So it would be the benefit of having this bridge. That's the difference that we have between site outcome and site contribution to impact.
So people being able to reach work more easily or get to
Yeah.
school would be the impact that we were trying to contribute to.
Yes.
So the next scenario, the coverage of audits has increased. And here we've got quite a split. So 37% of people went site capacity, 32% went site output, 11% outcome, and 21% contribution to impact.
Yeah, in this case, we're not talking about coverage of audits for financial audit, performance audit, or compliance audit. We are talking about a site output, as we're going to see when we bring more detail about the size value chain.
Sorry, somebody raised their hand, but they lowered it again. So I'm assuming that they don't want to speak. Okay, so the next scenario, improved compliance to rules and regulations by the executives.
So in this case, we also have a site outcome, and we expect it to happen as a consequence of audit work.
And so here, more than half the people got it correct. So 54% of people went for site outcome and 31% for site impact. So it's in that same level.
Yeah.
Government financial statements are valued by the development partners.
Yeah, and oh, I'm sorry.
So here we went. 15% of people were capacity, 8% output, 38% outcome, and 38% contribution to impact.
Yeah, and that's our final goal for financial audits, because we really want to enhance the confidence the users of the financial statements are going to have on those statements, right? So we're talking about site contribution to impact in this case.
And somebody has raised their hand, Pius, I think. So I will allow you to talk, and if you would like to if you meant to raise your hand, please unmute yourself and, yes, ask a question or make a comment.
Hello, can you get me?
Yes.
Yes, I just want to, I answered the first two questions, but I discovered that the third question and the rest of the questions from number 3 to number 8, I wasn't given the possibility to answer. So I don't know why the box of answers from question 3 to the rest didn't appear in my window.
Oh, I think maybe I stopped to spell. I'm not sure, but if you answer them in your head anyway, as we come to them, and see what you think, and we can discuss them. I don't think Zoom is my friend is the basic problem, but I'm working with it. Let's try. But yeah, have a look at the scenarios as we come to them and see what you think in your head, and I will try and figure out what happened so that it doesn't happen next time we do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jade.
Okay. So the next scenario, an annual performance report has been prepared by the SAI. Capacity, output, outcome, or contribution to SAI impact.
In this case, it's a SAI output, and we're also gonna talk about in more detail about this kind of SAI output. We are going to see that there are many different SAI outputs, and this is one of them.
And 70% of people got this correct, so that was great.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So the next scenario, actual beneficiaries are getting government support as a beneficiary list has been corrected following an audit report.
Yeah, in this case, it's we can clearly notice that a change in people's lives. So it's SAI contribution to impact.
So when we see that change in people's lives, then it gives us a clue it's a contribution to impact.
Yeah.
Okay. The number of patients admitted to hospital due to road accidents has been reduced after the audit. So is
Again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, please, again, contribution to impact. And
yes.
More than half the people have got that correct. And then we saw that a third of people had put outcome. So they were still seeing it as something after the audit. So we're getting into the right place, I think, with these, yeah. And the final one, government initiated a policy change following an audit.
Yeah, in this case, we can notice that following an audit, right? And this is happened in the public sector environment, right? As a result of audit work. So we're talking about SAI outcome in this situation.
Thank you. So I will stop sharing the poll. And hopefully, fingers crossed, can you still see the slides?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
so we
great.
now have a screen with quite a lot of information on. Don't worry, you do have this same information will be in your LMS, in your materials. And when we load up the recording, we will also load up the slides. So if you want to check back to anything, you will have the slides there to check back to.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jade, and thank you, everyone, for participating. That was a great warm-up that we had here. Now let's recap the main characteristics of each one of these elements and how they relate to each other. Typically, an SAI is primarily concerned with fulfilling its mandate and delivering high-quality audits. However, this framework, the SAI Strategic Management Framework, goes a step beyond this ambition and encourages SAIs to be explicit about how they can make a difference in people's lives through their work. So the logic of the SAI Strategic Management Framework starts with the critical question of what the ultimate reason for the SAI's existence is, or how it can contribute to making an impact, to a long-term lasting change to the lives of all. The three core objectives of INTOSAI P12 as well as the SAI contribution to the implementation of the UN 2030 agenda and the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are the main reference of SAI's contribution to impact, as we can notice here in this yellow part of the diagram. Additionally, the SAI's impact can also be seen as a contribution to democracy and social cohesion and inclusiveness, and to more robust public service delivery and citizens' well-being. One key aspect in relation to SAI's contribution to impact is related to the fact that a SAI can only indirectly influence changes at this level, because there are many other stakeholders and factors that also play a role here. So SAI's contribution to impact is not within the control of SAIs. So let's keep going backwards in the framework. For an SAI to achieve its ambition of contribution to impact, it needs to facilitate SAI outcomes. SAI outcomes are those medium to long-term changes in society that the SAI can substantially contribute to, but which are still not within the full control of the SAI. So, as it is for SAI's contribution to impact, SAI outcomes are not within the controls of SAIs, as we can see here written in red in the diagram. For example, an SAI can contribute to improved compliance of public sector officials with rules and regulations by issuing relevant and effective judgments and sanctions, or conducting and reporting on high-quality compliance audits with strong recommendations. However, if public sector officials do not read the audit reports, or are not held accountable for their actions, or do not comply with the judgments, enhanced compliance may not happen despite high-quality audit reports. So, SAI outcomes are not within the control of SAIs. Going further in the framework, we come to SAI outputs. SAI outputs are those results that are within the control of an SAI. Now it's different because they are within the control of an SAI. They are the direct products of SAI processes and for which the SAI is mostly responsible. It is through those products that the SAI has the highest probability of being able to influence broader changes in the public sector environment. SAI outputs are typically the result of its core business process, that is the audit process. So we have as a major example here of a SAI output, the audit reports, right? And in the case of SAIs with jurisdictional control functions, we're also talking about the processes related to jurisdictional activity. The framework includes several sets of SAI outputs. For example, in terms of accountability reporting, publicly available annual performance reports issued by SAI, peer reviews, and evaluations, audit financial statements are examples of accountability reporting of SAIs. Also, coverage, quality, timeliness, and publication of audit work for financial audit, for performance audit, and for compliance audit. Jurisdictional sanctions as well, stakeholder engagement and communication, and we'll make additional comments on stakeholders engagement because there are some particularities that we should pay attention to. And the list of SAI outputs goes on because it is related to each SAI mandate. And going further in the framework, a SAI's ability to produce outputs in turn depends on its capacity and environment. And the framework defines 3 dimensions of capacity: institutional capacity, organizational systems capacity, and professional staff capacity. The institutional capacity of a SAI relates to the SAI's independency and legal framework. So here we're talking about SAI's mandate that define its roles and obligations as a public sector institution. The second one, the organizational systems capacity, refers to the existence of robust structures, processes, audit methodologies, and practices related to the overall governance of a SAI and governance of each functional area in a SAI. And the third one, the professional staff capacity, refers to having in place an adequate number of professional, competent, and motivated people, taking into account inclusiveness and gender equality to effectively carry out the mandate of a SAI at both managerial and staff level. For SAIs to deliver the right quality of audit output, they need all these three capacities. And according to the framework, the SAI's value chain is also affected by the local context of country governance, political, social, cultural, and public financial management environment. So we have this here at the bottom part of the diagram. And this each SAI operates within this larger ecosystem, and the SAI's ability to deliver value and benefits is largely defined by its interaction with this ecosystem. And in this regard, SAI culture, leadership, and SAI value of gender and inclusiveness can be enablers who lead to robust interaction with the environment to deliver value within the local context. And we have this here in the upper part of the diagram. SAI culture, SAI leadership, and inclusiveness and gender are those enablers. So those are the main elements of the SAI strategic management framework. And as we could see, according to its logic, for a SAI contribute value, the SAI capacities need to translate into SAI outputs. The SAI outputs need to translate into SAI outcomes, which will result in SAI contribution to impact. And all of that is affected by the SAI environment where the SAI operates, and each SAI has certain enablers who lead to robust interaction with the environment. And also, in relation to the links between SAI outputs and SAI outcomes, it's interesting to pay attention to the fact that while most of them are interconnected, there are more direct links between certain outputs and outcomes. And we have this here demonstrated by the arrows that we have in the diagrams. For example, the accountability reporting links to a SAI being seen as a relevant and model organization. The financial audit links to public confidence in government financial systems. The compliance audit, coverage, quality, timeliness, and publication, and judgments, coverage, quality, timeliness, and publication are SAI outputs that link to the SAI outcome of improved compliance with laws and regulations. And SAI engagement with key stakeholders links more to stakeholder engagement in accountability. And as I have mentioned that we are going to bring more detail about stakeholders engagement, it's important to pay attention to the fact that it may be linked to a SAI capacity, a SAI output, and a SAI outcome, as we can see by those oval shapes that we have here in the diagram. So how could we differentiate the circumstances that we cause them to be linked to each one of these elements of the framework? So some tips that we have here. When the stakeholder engagement is seen as a part of the audit process, it represents a SAI capacity. So we're talking about all the procedures that we have to carry out during the audit, throughout the audit process, in order to engage with stakeholders. So in this case, we're talking about a SAI capacity. When the stakeholder engagement is not a part of the audit process, but is done by the SAI, for example, through press releases or SAI support to the parliament, it represents a SAI output. And when it comes to stakeholders' engagement in accountability, it corresponds to a SAI outcome, which comprehend actions taken by others, not the SAI, okay, as a result of audit work. So besides tracing the value chain for financial audit, performance audit, and compliance audit through different scenarios that we have, in the educational module related to this topic, we are also asked to identify the point at which the value chain is broken, consequently preventing SAIs from delivering value. So we identify that we have this idea of a chain, and we are asked to reflect on what would happen when something is not working in this chain. And in connection with that, we have the IPDP reflection question for the module, which is, in your view, which of these elements are the most important for SAI to deliver value? Please select one option and write cogent argument to support your choice. And then we have all the elements that we are asked to reflect on. So the elements that we have are professional SAI auditors, SAI independence and legal framework, SAI stakeholder engagement, SAI culture, SAI leadership, and enabling environment. And then they say in the question, think about your own SAI, identify the most demonstrated capacities, outputs, and outcomes in your SAI. So it's interesting to reflect about this question here, because despite the uniqueness of each SAI's context, the specific aspects of each reflection, consequently, it's going to be common to all of us that being aware of the factors and elements of the SAI strategic management framework, their interconnections, and how they affect our SAI's ability to cause a positive impact to all, should be permanently considered by us, SAI auditors, and our SAI's leadership while carrying out our responsibilities. In other words, as a multi-factor chain, each element plays a role to the achievement of our main goal of creating value and benefit for all. And by being aware of those elements and how intertwined they are, we are able to enhance the effectiveness of our work. So those are the main aspects of the SAI strategic management framework that we wanted to bring here. And just lastly, I would like to encourage everyone to read chapter 2 of the SAI strategic management handbook, version 1, because it brings all those aspects and even more information on that with lots of detail, and it's really, really good. I highly recommend it. So thank you. And now I hand over to you, Jade.
Thank you very much, Anna Carolina. As somebody requested that they got cut on the quiz, I will put the quiz into the LMS with the webinar so that you can practice the quiz if you would like to. We will also give some of the write-up of what Anna's been talking about so that you can go over again if you like. But we do think this is quite a key part in terms of understanding our SAIs. What I would like to do next is to think about what kind of cross-cutting competencies a SAI auditor needs to deliver these value and benefits. So here we're going to use Menti. So if you go to menti.com, and this is the code for our Menti. So it's menti.com. It's given us in the code. It's 7506551. And there's also a QR code on the screen if you would like. And I put a link in the chat. The chat is also open, so if anybody would like to introduce themselves to say where you're from, then it'd be really nice to hear from you. If we could have a go at the Menti, it'd be really nice to hear what competencies you think that we need in order to be able to deliver on those value and benefits. And make sure those joining instructions are there. So if you can't enter the Menti, if you would like to write in the webinar chat, that's fine as well. It's always a relief when we do a Menti and the first things come up. I know it takes a little bit of time, but it's always takes a while to get into the Menti. So some nice things coming up here. We have professional judgment. And for me, professional judgment is one of the cruxes of being an auditor. So I'll start first with the word professional, because the word professional is very important to me. I always think that when we think about this being a professional, like you talked about a doctor or a lawyer or an auditor, then you're in a position of trust. So people are trusting you to do something for them because they don't have the knowledge or the experience to be able to do it themselves. So you're making a judgment on behalf of others. So that's where I think that professional judgment comes in very strongly and importantly. And professional judgment should also be something that is based on your knowledge and experience and skills that others don't have. So it should be something that you can justify, that you can explain how you came to that judgment. And often in audit, we talk about measuring against criteria to make a judgment, to make a decision. We also have here due care, which for me relates very much to that concept of professionalism and professional judgment. So this idea that because you are acting on somebody else's behalf, the stakeholders, usually in the case of public sector audit, it's important that you act with due care. So you do things that within your competency, you do them as well as you can. You don't do things that you're not capable of doing, and you give any limitations to the work that you've done. So you make it clear the context in which it can be understood. We also have analytical skills, which we see a lot of in audit, ethics, then some other things that relate to ethics, like integrity, professionalism, accountability. So things that come as ethical values. There's also critical thinking in a couple of places, which comes back to that idea that you should be questioning and providing professional skepticism, looking at the information that's in front of you, the data that's in front of you. Understanding the SIs, technical skills, documentation. So the important things about actually doing an audit. You see communication skills in a few places, communication abilities. Good communication, lots of different ways, but communication there very strongly. And as auditors, we have many different communications that we need to do. So we have communications within the SAI, just at the point where we're organizing our teams, where we are trying to get resources for our audits. We have communications with our auditee in terms of telling them what the audit's about, why you're there, but also the continued engagement, the continued communication throughout the audit to make sure that you get the information that you need, but also that the auditee will trust you, that they will believe you, so that when you come to make your recommendations, they are ready to accept them. So that communication through the audit is one of the positive things we can do to try and stop that value chain from getting broken. Then once we've done the audit, we publish our report, which is a communication, and we may have press releases or other things that we do to try and put emphasis on that report to get buy-in for our recommendations. So communication is a really important part of this audit journey. We have transparency, which comes back to our ethics. Attention to detail. We also have some things like tools like audit planning templates that come in as things that we can use in addition to our competencies. We see academic competence. So this idea that you should have a certain level of questioning and intelligence and bringing together information from different sources. So lots of different things there. Diversity, so that comes back into that importance that we want to make sure that we leave no one behind and that we take into account different views when we're doing our audits. The ability to formulate audit questions, which is very important, particularly in performance and maybe compliance audit. High quality report, so being able to write a high quality report to compile and create is important. So we have quite a lot of different things there. It's really interesting to see them all coming out. Some of the ones that we don't see there include courage and resilience and emotional intelligence. So when we think about courage, we sometimes include this because as an auditor, you have to kind of make a line in the sand and say, like, this is what is right, and I'll stand here to support this line. When the Ebola pandemic was on, when there was this crisis, we saw that some of the funds that were being given to countries who were suffering from the Ebola crisis were audited by the audit offices. And this took quite a lot of courage because it meant going into areas where Ebola was happening, but also quite a lot of courage because there was a lot of pressure from the government not to audit those funds, that the money was important to the country and that the auditors, by going in and auditing, might take money away from the people who are most in need. And the auditors were able to stand firm and say, no, it's important that we spend this money in the right way. And it's important that the international community sees that we are doing so that they are encouraged to give us more money, and that where we haven't done so, we rectify. So there we saw auditors really taking a very strong stance, very courageous in terms of making sure the work got done and was recognised. We've also seen occasions, and we've all heard of occasions, where auditors have been threatened and have had to, I guess, decide how to deal with that level of threat that they have. The difference between courage and recklessness, though, so, you know, do take care of yourselves, but it's worth thinking about that idea that you sometimes need to make this stand. In terms of emotional intelligence, we've included that also in the cross-cutting paper too, because it relates a lot to some of the other things that we have in here, such as communication skills, working with our auditees, and so on. So emotional intelligence has kind of 4 parts. There's a self-awareness, so knowing what's happening for you, what your emotions are. Self-regulation, so being able to control those. Other awareness, so being aware of what other people are feeling and thinking. And relationship management, so being able to work with other people in light of what they're feeling and thinking to be able to come to good outcomes. Often we think about things like persuasion and influence into this part. So as an auditor, if you go into a situation where you're frustrated because the auditee was maybe difficult to reach, and then when you get to the auditee, you're already frustrated, they're not very pleased to see you, they're stressed, the auditor has come, they don't give you the documentation. Then if you recognize what you're feeling and you recognize what they're feeling and you manage to maintain kind of calm, peaceful levels, then you can really bring about a good outcome, partly by getting the information that you want, that you need to have your audit, but also by working with the auditee to try and make them understand what you're doing as an auditor, and therefore work with you to bring about good results, to deliver those value and benefits that we wanted to deliver. And I think to some extent, this professional engagement that we see here is some of those issues. Also see problem-solving skills, which I think is important and interesting. So lots of different competencies that we need. And when we go into cross-cutting paper 2, we look at delivering some of these competencies. So cross-cutting paper 2 is called Behave Professionally. And the learning outcomes are reflections on ethical behaviour and professional skills required to deliver effective SAI audits, including leaving no one behind. which is back to that diversity part and inclusion. Enhanced skills in areas such as communication, which we saw there, stakeholder management, emotional intelligence, and strengthened ability to exercise professional judgment, act with courage and resilience, and continuously strive for excellence. I think in terms of resilience, many of us really saw the need of that and felt we worked with that during the time of the pandemic, where suddenly many things were changed for us. So I want to talk a little bit about ethics, which many people identified as being one of the cross-cutting skills that we needed. I'm going to launch one last poll. So this is about your ethical code. So I'd like you to answer 2 questions. One is, does your SAI have a code of conduct? Yes, no, maybe you don't know. If you don't know, feel free to write that in the chat. And how long is it since you last read the code of conduct? So many of us identified that ethics was important for SAI auditors. And I think it's one of those things that really underpins that professionalism that we were talking about. And SAI 130 requires that SAIs have an ethical code. And I see that actually 100% of those people who have responded say that your SAI does have an ethical code. There's been a lot of work done with the SAI 130 to try and get it bedded in and to have these code of conducts. We can then ask how long since you've read the code of conduct, because it's all very well having a nice code of conduct, but if it's just sitting in a drawer and we don't know what's in it, then it doesn't really help us. And your answers here are less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, or more than 3 years. I will admit that I did read my code of conduct in preparing for this webinar, so I have done it quite recently. But also at IDI, we have an annual mandatory training on our code of ethics to make sure that we are up to date with it. And there we look at different scenarios that might have emerged, which will change the way that we see our code of ethics. So I will end this poll now because mainly people seem to have stopped answering. And we can see that nearly 60% of you read your code of ethics within the last year, which is really wonderful to see. If you haven't, then I would suggest that when you get to the questions, the reflection questions and the IPDP, it's a really good opportunity to bring out that code of conduct again. A third of you, well, a quarter of you had read it within the last 1 to 3 years, and 14% had read it more than 3 years ago. So a code of conduct should be live documents so that they can really help us in our work. We have recorded some interviews that we would like to share with you. We have an interview with one of the architects of SAI 130, and we also have an interview with an Auditor General who speaks about SAI 130. I'm going to share a few clips of these videos now, and then I will share the full videos in the LMS for you to watch at your own time. These are kind of background materials that help to put our modules into context. So our modules are very much based around SAI 130. And SAI 130 was revised in 2016, which made it much more tangible, and there's been a lot of work to bring it into use. It includes 5 values, which are integrity, independence and objectivity, competence, professional behaviour, and confidentiality and transparency. And sometimes when we think about these values, we can think about how they look in our daily lives. So if we think about the PESA exams that people will sit, we always have integrity. So we try to make sure, we do make sure that the exam is not shared, that people don't have access to the exam in advance. And we work with Pearson VUE to reduce the chances of people being able to cheat. In terms of independence and objectivity, we use objective test marking, which means computer mark questions, so that everybody gets treated exactly the same for the same answer. We looked at the competence of the people who set the exam questions. So we have people who are experts in compliance, performance, and financial audit. We took people from different SAIs so that they would represent the different contexts. And we trained people in how to write exam questions. We would expect to have professional behaviour from our exam staff. And we maintain confidentiality and transparency. So we don't share the exam questions, and we only share the result of the exam, so the pass or fail, with the people who sat the exam and their SAIs. But we're transparent about the process. So we explain how we set the exam questions, what learning objectives are tested, how long the exam will be, and all of those different things. So we use these in our work. In the module, we will look at different threats to these values and how we can nullify those threats. So how do we protect our values when we see a threat? Sometimes identifying a threat can be an issue. So one of my favorite stories from when I was an audit manager, one of the auditors who was on my team came to me, and he'd been out to an audit and he had met a woman on the audit. So he was the auditor and she was working in the administration department of the auditee. And she was involved in overseeing the receipts of the auditee. And he said, you know, I think this might be a conflict of interest because I would like to ask her out. And there's nothing in our code of conduct. We dealt with familial relationships, with financial relationships, but we didn't deal with this wanting to ask this person out. And he was concerned that it would be very difficult for him to be objective about her whilst trying to impress her and ask her out. And so he brought it to us, and we had a big debate in the office about whether this was really a conflict or interest or not. But in the end, we decided that actually we thought that the fact that he felt that his objectivity might be threatened, that he wanted to be nice to this person, so therefore it would be difficult for him to be objective. We put somebody else to do the audit, and he did a different audit. He also asked the lady to join him one night for dinner. They went for dinner, they got married. And so it was a very happy ending to an ethical conflict where no damage was done to either our organisation or his romantic prospects. But it did tell us that there's quite a lot to this audit planning. You have to get it just right. But so it's really worth thinking about what sorts of things can create a dilemma for you, and are they always the sorts of things that you think? But it's always worth thinking and asking yourself to look for these dilemmas. Okay, so the first video that I want to share, if I can, is one of the architects of ISAI 130. So this is, I'll let her introduce herself. I'm trying to make sure that I am going to share my sound. Hold on one moment. I'm super nervous because this went wrong yesterday, so please bear with me.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I am Helena Lopes. I am in the Court of Auditors of Portugal. And in fact, in 2011, we started with this EuroSci work about ethics and audit. We created in EuroSci a task force called EuroSci Task Force on Ethics and Audit. And this group has worked in two directions, I would say two lines of work. One, to promote the relevance of ethical conduct and integrity in supreme audit institutions, how to manage the ethics inside our institutions, and another line of work, how to promote ethical conduct and integrity in public organizations through our audit work. This task force has done a lot of work. It has been conducted surveys, meetings, seminars, workshops, papers, articles. It has been involved in the review of ESI 30, now ESI 130. And this ESI was quite changed in 2016. It has produced guidance on how to implement this new ESI and how to audit ethical dimensions in public institutions. It has provided assistance to SAIs. It has done a lot of cooperation work with other inter-SAI regions. And in what regards guidance, it has 4 pieces of guidance, 3 of them related with the implementation of ESI 30, some recommendations on how to implement it, and very recently we have produced one guide about ethics training and another guide about how to assess ethical management in SAIs, which is an ethics maturity model. So we have a lot of work that you can profit from. We have a website. You can access it through the EuroSAI webpage. But in fact, the task force has just finished its job. It has been closed this year, and it will be replaced by what we called in the EuroSAI the ethics network. We are creating an ethics network which will run a platform for the exchange of knowledge and experience in this area.
Thank you. Sorry, I think I called it a working group before I got confused. Apologies. So I was having a look at some of the work that you've done, and I saw you've done a survey of some of the SAIs and what they're doing and how they're acting in terms of the policies and procedures they have in place for ethics. But I guess the kind of first question that I'll ask you is, why do you think ethics are important when we're in this SAI environment?
I do think it's very, very important, and I believe for our participants in this webinar, it is also important, as we have just seen, and also for their institutions, because most of them have ethics codes and the auditors know about it. I would say that there are 2 orders of reasons why this ethics is a very important issue for auditors and for supreme audit institutions. The first type of reasons is like inherent reasons. This is, as we have seen, part of being professional, both for auditors and both for SAIs. There is a personal dimension here and an institutional dimension. We as auditors want to be recognized as ethical, as respectful, and we also want our institution to be recognized as such, as objective, as impartial, and as inspired only by public interest. So it is a part of doing our jobs well and being recognized as such. In fact, we know that unethical conduct puts the credibility, the reputation of our institution at risk, and particularly in a SAI, and we have seen some examples of that in all parts of the world. And so being ethical is very important for us and very important for our institution to be respected for the work it conducts. But there are also context or environmental reasons, because the SAIs are part of the integrity system of a country, and we know that nowadays values and ethical values are seen as not being respected all over the world. a survey by OECD has shown that a large majority of citizens are concerned about corruption in a larger extent than about other issues. And so we have a role to make this better. People are very suspicious about the public institutions, and we also are a public institution. And when we see what are the pillars of the national integrity systems, the audit institutions, the supreme audit institutions are a very important part of those systems. And so to be trustworthy and to promote trust in public work and public institutions and public sector, it's a very important part of our role. And we cannot do that if we are not an example of that.
Thank you. This was Helena, who, as she said, was a part of the Eurosai task force and contributed to that update of ISAI 130 that happened in 2016. And we saw here these sort of dual reasons why ethics are so important. One is because we want to be taken seriously, and the other is because we're going in and we're making judgments about others. So we see those different sides there. I would also like us to just hear from Dashu Tashi, who is the Auditor General of Sai Bhutan. And he was interviewed by my colleague, Karma Tenzin. And we asked basically the same question.
So Dashu, my first question is, why are ethics important in supreme audit institutions?
Personally, because that question, in fact, comes quite frequently in my side. And then the answer that I often give is because of course, I always tell them that I am not an expert on ethics, but then I'm a practitioner, because as an auditor, I've been following the ethics, and now as a head of SAI, I not only have to follow it, I also have to monitor the compliance to the ethics by the auditors. Basically, in fact, I feel like for an auditor, and even for the supreme audit institutions, most of the supreme audit institutions, we enjoy some degree of independence. Of course, many enjoy full independence in the form of functional, financial, human resource. And when there is an independence, it means that we don't have to depend on anybody for our financial resources, depend on anybody. In fact, we can do whatever we like, actually. So that is the sort of independence that most supreme audit institutions, they enjoy. So that's why when we have this independence, in fact, then we also, together with that also comes the power, we can exercise, we can do whatever we like. So when we have this sort of an environment, then we need some sort of a check and balance. Otherwise, the independence could be inappropriately used, not used for the specified purposes. So that's why as a supreme audit institution, the ethics becomes important. And then when I say ethics, I always feel when you term just the word ethics, it's something voluntary. I know, but then when you say code of ethics, then it becomes binding on the individual, on the profession, because otherwise ethics, morals, the principles, these are something that in fact one follows because one feels that that you should follow it. But then when you say code of ethics, we are bound to follow that. So that as an auditor, it's not only to have ethics, but we should have in place a code of ethics. Like in my side, we have the code of conduct, good conduct, ethics, and secrecy. So that's one. Then the other one is, as the former speaker, the previous speaker, in fact, I agree with whatever she said. In fact, one is leading by example. As an auditor, our work is to check the work of others indirectly, directly or indirectly. But then whenever we are being checked, as an individual, we want someone of person with high integrity, someone competent, someone who is in fact, accountable, and then someone whom we can rely on, for whom we have trust, faith, and confidence. So that's why, in fact, we have to lead by an example. We don't want to be checked by someone who has no integrity. We don't want to be checked by someone who doesn't follow what he says. So that's why, in fact, in order to lead by example, because because we always say as a doctor, a drunkard doctor, if a drunkard doctor says, okay, don't drink, who will listen to that person? I don't think anybody will listen. A smoker saying don't smoke, who will listen to that person? Or who himself smokes, so why should we listen? I think the doctor must have some reason, he's lying. But if someone, in fact, following what he is saying, if he does that, then we follow that. So that's why, as an auditor, I think we should set very high standards, integrity, in terms of integrity, accountability, in terms of professionalism. So that's why where ethics again comes into the picture, because sometimes we follow it, because in my side, we have two things. One is the code of ethics, and other one is the core values. The core values become something that, it becomes voluntarily, but not something that's binding on the auditors. But when you say ethics, and within the ethics comes accountability, transparency, professionalism. In fact, you look at most of the ethical code of conduct, it normally boils down on few topics. One is integrity, accountability, transparency, professionalism. So these are something that, in fact, the SAs must follow in order, not only the SAs, in fact, the auditors, so that, we can audit without fear, favor, and with confidence. So that's the other issue. Then finally, of course, coming from the independence, as I mentioned, is the power. Because as an auditor, because people always feel auditors are very powerful. They can do whatever they like. In fact, they can check our work. So that's why, if you look at this, I think we are all aware of this fraud triangle, where we have this, opportunity, pressure, and then rationalization. So these are the areas. When you have the power, with the power comes fear. People fear us then. People fear the auditors. And it is that this fear, it's because of power, that the integrity, power and the fear that the integrity of the auditors could be under constant threat. You see, as the previous speaker mentioned about bribery, when there is a threat, when the people fear us, then the question of bribery and all these things comes into the picture, because they fear us. And then because of that fear, our integrity could be under the constant pressure. So unless we have some core of ethics in place, people could be, that's an opportunity for them, because it creates an opportunity. And with a bit of a pressure, then they could be easily mesmerized into all those aspects of the fraud and corruption. So I basically feel these are some of the reasons why, in fact, the code of ethics, the ethics becomes important for the auditors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ladashwa.
Thank you. So here we have heard from some of our speakers, and they will share more in the videos that we will include in the LMS, including the answers to some of the questions that have come in the chat. One moment. So in the chat, there are two questions. One is, how can we measure applying ethics in an SAI? And the other is, how can we enforce ethics in an SAI? The first one I think is really difficult. How do we measure if people have applied ethics? I was thinking that maybe we can't directly, but we can measure the trust that people have in the organization, and to maintain a high trust, then you have to have a good ethical standard. But I don't know if you had any thoughts, Anna, or if anyone has any experience of measuring ethics. I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I totally agree. In terms of measuring, I do not have any specific thought to share. In terms of enforcing, in relation to the second question, I was thinking about that. At first, we could thinking about ethics at the engagement level, right? In which each one of us, as a member of the engagement team, have we have to follow our code of ethics, but also there is a role related to the supervisor, which has to identify the threats and identify how to respond to those threats that might come out during the engagement, as we are going to study in the modules related to that. And I believe it's also important to raise awareness about the topic of ethics. We have to talk about it. We have to study. We have to learn about the fundamental ethical values that we have in SI 130. We have to read our own code of ethics in relation to our own SI. And in other specific cases, maybe depending on the SI at the institutional level, for example, there is a possibility of having a committee which can be consulted in certain situations. For example, when people are not really sure about if a certain situation would represent a conflict or not, this unit or department committee should be consulted. So those were the main things that came to my mind in relation to enforcing those ethical aspects in real life situations.
And I think those are good answers. We often think about the kind of the carrot and the stick. So you can encourage people, you can reward ethical behavior, you can include it in performance appraisals, but also having strong sanctions against those who do not comply with their ethical requirements are quite important. I'm a member of an accountancy institute, and if you're found to not comply with the ethical requirements, then you can be disbarred from the institute, which is a fairly serious sanction. But if you would like to know more about how we could enforce it, if you hear the rest of the speakers, which we will include in the social learning section in the LMS, then they will answer questions such as, what can SI do to ensure ethical behaviour? How do we ensure auditors comply in the field? And give any advice for auditors who are in an environment that doesn't support ethical behaviour. So what do you do if the people around you are not acting within their code of ethics, or your SI does not have a strong ethical framework? And so that takes us to the end of the webinar. I think we've dipped our toes into the value and benefits of SAIs and also into the competencies that are required. I would also recommend that you have a look at the tutorials that are included in the LMS. There is one that has been developed specifically to add context and explanation on ISAI 100. So if you want some further reinforcement after you've done those modules, then there's some tutorials available to you. But before we close, if anybody has any questions, then please let us know. We are here to answer your questions. If you have questions outside of the webinar, then I would really recommend that you visit our help desk, which is pesa.hesc.com. On our help desk, you can ask any questions you want about password resetting or access to the LMS. But you can also ask us questions about the content. So if there is anything that you want to ask, please do. I would also suggest that you consider it to be like a goal that you should ask us a question about something from the materials. So like put it into your aims to target us, to ask us something, so that you begin to feel this relationship that we're there for you. There's myself and Anna, and then we have experts from compliance audit, performance audit, and financial audit, and we're ready to help you. And I think, Gabriella, you have your hand raised, so I'm going to allow you to talk. I think you might need to unmute yourself. Yes, it will be the same link for future webinars. And the next webinar that you will have will be for your functional stream. So there'll be a webinar for either CA, FA, or PA as appropriate. And we will also have some webinars when we come up to exam time. There is also in your LMS there is also in your LMS a tutorial that's recorded that's all about the IPDP. So I really recommend that you have a look at the tutorial about the initial professional development portfolio to just ensure that you feel confident about that. Gabriella, I haven't heard anything from you, so I'm going to assume that it's an accidental hand. But please do get in touch with any questions. And thank you so much, Anna, and thank you to everyone who's attended the webinar. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.